Yeah. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen who are joining us for today's webinar on ISO 22716, GMP for cosmetic producers. And we're happy to have you. It's always a privilege and an honor to have you with us to discuss issues that borders on quality and issues that borders on your production. As was advertised a couple of weeks ago, today we're talking about ISO 22716, mainly on GMP for cosmetics producers. So for all the cosmetic producers who've joined us, you're welcome. This is part of the WACOMP webinar series where we have various topics we talk on, and today it's on quality. We have our regular quality experts in the person of Fred Jamna who will take us through the discussions. We would also have our colleague, Frances Pra from GSA, who will join us during the question and answer session to also give us inputs on the issues of GMPs and issues that we have bordering on GSA. So without holding breath and taking too much of your time, I hand over right away to Fred Jamra, who will take us through the presentation. Again, I would inform you that you can use the Q&A button already to upload your questions, any questions you have, any discussions that you have, you put it there. Before Fred takes over, on the screen, we're going to have a poll, and the poll would give Fred an idea of what we expect and where we are. So these are three questions that we have. Do you have any GMP to guide your cosmetic production? Any good manufacturing processes to guide your cosmetic production? It's a yes or no. We employ all of you to please answer so that it guides us in this presentation. If you answered yes to the previous question, what are the reference documents? What documents you use? In-house, ISO national, or FDA codes? Then the last but not the least, do you know anything about ISO 22761? And so that is where we are. Good. So please, let's all attempt to answer these questions. Yes, there are about 22 of us, only 5. So please, if you've not ticked, please just do us the honors of taking. It helps us. It gives Fred an idea of who is here and what we expect and where he has to place emphasis on and where he has to just let go, even though the presentations are already there. The numbers are still low, only 6 people. So please, if you haven't done it, please go ahead and do that for us. We're still waiting. It shouldn't take too much of our time, less than the next 30 seconds, we wrap up and then go. So please, let's have the answers flowing. So it's a yes or no, 2. Question 2, in-house, ISO, or FDA. Still, we only have 6 people. Please, the remaining members, please and please do us the favor, do us the honors of answering. Yeah, it's going up. Only 9 of us have done it. So if you know, if you've not done it, you know you've not done it. So please do it for us so we don't spend too much time. The next 30 seconds, we'll pull the results out for Fred to know, and then he can commence. We have 50% so far that have done it. So the remaining 50%, please, we're waiting for you. So we are counting down the next 5 seconds. Maybe some genuinely do not want to do it. Okay, so the results is up now. So 82% of those who answered are saying yes, they have. The reference material, about FDA, 45%, in-house, another code, so we all have something. And then for knowledge about the ISO standard, it's an overwhelming no. About half of us do not know anything about the standard. So Fred, I think the work is cut out for you.
Sure.
Wish you all the best. We stay in the background. We support you. Have a nice time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this UNIDO WACOMP Ghana webinar on good manufacturing practices, GMP for cosmetic products. This GMP is based on the ISO 22716, which unfortunately very few of you have heard about. Though it's good to base your GMP either on your own code of practice or FDA, but that is not good enough because this GMP based on ISO 22000, it is what is required of you as a cosmetic producer or exporter. So with this, I want to take you through the content of our discussion this morning. We'll try to put up some few thoughts as a way of introduction and try to explain what good manufacturing practices, that is the GMP. And this GMP, which is based on the ISO 22716, vis-a-vis the cosmetic regulation of the EU, which is 1223/2009, the goal of GMP for the cosmetic products, which stakeholders are supposed to get this document in place and have it implemented. Then I'll look at some few guidelines from the ISO 22116, which is the guidelines for manufacturing practice for cosmetic sector, and try to summarize, that is the nutshell conclusion, what this GMP vis-a-vis the EU regulation 1223 and the ISO standard 22716. By way of introduction, the cosmetic sector is controlled by an European Union regulation, cosmetic regulation 1223, that requires all the cosmetic products that you intend to export to Europe should comply with. And the market says that it should comply with a good manufacturing practice, which is based on or set by the ISO 22716 standard. Indeed, the regulation refers to ISO 22716 standard and requires to add a declaration of compliance associated to the manufacturing facility to the product information file. You know, before you export, you need what is called the product information file. And it's saying that in that file, or as an attachment to that file, there should be a declaration, or if you like, a certificate to indicate that your GMP is based on this guideline, the ISO 22716. That is why I say it's unfortunate that very few of you know about this standard, meaning that you may have the national or the FDA code of practice that is guiding your operation. It is not enough to export to Europe without basing your GMP on this ISO 22716. So it is a very important discussion that we're going to have this morning. The ISO 22716 defines the quality and the reproducibility of cosmetic products found on the European market. So if your target is to sell on the European market, then it is a must-do requirement, and therefore we should be able to assist you develop a GMP or draft a GMP that is based on the ISO 22716 that will be in line with the EU regulation 1223. So for your GMP to be compliant, you need to apply the principles or the guidelines prescribed in the ISO 22716 so that you can make the appropriate declaration that your GMP complies with the EU regulation. So the focus of our discussion will be on the GMPs. And this will be the central pillar of the cosmetic regulatory framework. And the ISO 22716 cosmetic standard on GMP and the quality aspects of cosmetics. In this good manufacturing practice requirement, we are saying that you should look at the facility design, the construction, the layout, product flow, product handling, packaging, and storage. Look at the waste management aspect of your production. If there are any pests that is unwanted pest, let's say anything that you do not expect to be found in your facility, you consider it as a pest. Look at your transportation arrangement or management, and then personal hygiene. Issues on traceability and how to ensure that the ingredients used for production or producing the final product are traceable. And therefore, you are respecting the standard set for cosmetic products. Because of this, you try to highlight issues of traceability, which is, a different subject matter altogether, but it should be part and parcel of your product information file or documentation. So let's try to explain or describe what a GMP, the good manufacturing practice, is all about. Good manufacturing practices are practical and organizational guidelines set up to ensure the reproducibility and the quality of the manufacturing process of cosmetics. Meaning you should have certain protocols or procedures or policies in place to guide your operations in respect of how you produce and how you ensure quality is brought in your processes. It consists of measures that have to be implemented, not only drafting the method or the policies or the protocols on a piece of paper, but it should be implemented in relation to the manufacturing process, control, storage, and shipment. Control, production control is an issue with most of our manufacturing setup. And therefore, we have to pay specific attention to product control, storage, and shipment. Please note, this good manufacturing practice, the GMP, concern the quality of the cosmetic product, the quality fit for purpose, your ability for the product to meet the requirements of a cosmetic product. These requirements obviously will be found in the specific product standard, being it national, regional, or an international product standard for a product defined as cosmetic. And during the last 2 or 3 webinars, we tried to explain what constitutes a cosmetic product and some of the challenges that you encounter if you intend exporting because of the variations in the definition of what constitutes cosmetic. Please, they do not target the safety of the employee nor the environmental protection aspect of your production. Yet you have to control and manage your waste. What is the goal of this GMP? The goal of the GMP for cosmetic products, as described in the standard, I'm referring to the ISO 22716, which is a guideline for developing GMP for cosmetic sector. The goal first is to validate the compliance of your business management system, plan, direct control, in brief, with the requirements of the European Cosmetic Regulation. I've mentioned that if you want to sell on the European market, then you should comply with this regulation. That will ensure access to the European market, very big market. And once we are able to access this market, there's a likelihood that you'll be able to access other markets. I'm talking about the American market or even the North African market. GMP and this regulation 1223 requires good manufacturing practice. I've said it and I'll keep repeating it for the product. And the basis for developing your GMP should be the ISO 22716, because the regulation requires you to add a declaration of compliance associated with the manufacturing facility. And this should be part and parcel of your product information file, which is a must to be able to access the European markets, or if you like, other international markets. Now the question is the regulation requiring ISO 22716 certification? Please ponder over it, because I'll come back to that. There is a challenge in there, but there's a solution. So think about it. Before I provide the solution, I'll ask the question again. Is the regulation, this regulation, European regulation 1223, regarding cosmetic production, does it require the ISO 22716 certification? That is why I was not very happy when I heard that from the pool. Very few have heard about this. Big challenge for Ulido WACOMP Ghana to resolve. So who are the stakeholders involved? In modern ISO management systems, we say the interested parties. So I will broaden it to include all interested parties, direct and indirect people who are interested in what you do, not only the so-called core stakeholders. The GMP concern all those involved in these areas, whether you are doing manufacturing, you are doing the control, talking about the value chain, all those actors within, whether you are storing either retailer or wholesaler, whether you are doing the shipment of the cosmetic products, being it the finished product or semi-processed, whether you are a distributor, importer, or exporter, you need this GMP because it cuts across the value chain. Now let's look at some of the guidelines for the good manufacturing practice. In this webinar, because we don't have time, I'll try to summarize the different points in your GMP standard, that is the ISO 22716, which describe the different measures to adopt to comply with good manufacturing practice. The key word here is to adopt. I do not say adapt. I say adopt it, pick it and use it. Adoption will mean some modification. This one, it does not give room for adoption. So adopt it, make it your own and use it so that you will be able to comply with the good manufacturing practice required by the EU regulation. What we are going to discuss and the list I've given you is not exhaustive. So to get the necessary information, please refer to the official publication, which is ISO 22716 standard, which you may find, or I should say it's available at the Ghana Standards Authority library as a cosmetic producer or retailer or importer or exporter. Now, let's look at the first guideline from the standard. It's talking about staff or employees. It said your staff must belong to a clearly structured organization. It means that they should be part and parcel of your structure, organizational structure, where every employee knows what responsibilities and activity he or she must do vis-a-vis the process of production, control, storage, and shipment of your cosmetic products. Responsibilities and activities. should be made clear, because we are talking about good practice. Good practice. Therefore, it is necessary that the staff have the appropriate training, documentation, and skills for the manufacturing, because in the control process control, there are a lot of documentation. So you need the training, you need the skill so that you avoid errors. Because your product information files should contain the relevant and the most appropriate documentation. Now let's look at the premises where the action takes place, where the transformation, where the value addition takes place. First, must allow to easily observe the following condition. Ensure the product protection. That means try to avoid contamination, sabotage, all kinds of things that will jeopardize the quality and the safety of your product. So the product protection, where you do the mixing, the formulation, you should protect that area so that you will not compromise the safety and the quality of your product. Be regularly clean, sanitize, and maintain. Topical application, talking about cosmetic, you apply and you know the kinds of hazards that is associated with that kind of product. So keep the area clean, sanitize as often as possible, and maintain the hygiene condition of the place. Minimize the risk, your premise, of mix of product. So product A, well identified, kept separately, raw materials well kept, well stored, internal controls of the operational flows so that you do not cross-contaminate what you brought in. It's a good product, the quality raw material or semi-processed packaging material. Please minimize the risk of mix of products. Now the equipment. Equipment used by the company must be designed. So we are talking about the designing of the equipment even before you take the decision to start production. The design should be such that it will avoid contamination of the product. And here you are including the shipping. For example, if there is a workshop closer, please make sure that workshop equipment is separated from what you use for the actual production. The equipment should be designed so that you can clean, talking about the facilitation of cleaning, maintenance, and the regular calibration, because we are going to do a lot of very critical weighing processes. Allow space so that you can clean in between and below the equipment. Means that the arrangement, the way you position the equipment in your production floor, should be such that you'll be able to clean and clean well. Now let's look at one of the critical things, the elements of this GMP, the raw material and packaging items. UNIDO provided, UNIDO WACOMP Ghana, a webinar on packaging. And I believe those of you who took part in that will still remember the importance of packaging. The packaging items must meet specific quality criteria. Quality criteria. Okay? They should be able to protect the integrity of the cosmetic, the product, the finished product. Avoid contamination. Avoid leakage. And all kinds of requirements that is needed. These are very specific for cosmetic. So the packaging item should meet those specific quality criteria. Please create a dynamic supply chain. We are talking about information that will trace problems that might arise during your transportation or the packaging. The reception and the storage purchases should depend on strict rules Verify, meaning check what has been supplied to you, the raw material. Does it meet your specs, safety and quality specification? Does it contain any ingredient or substance that is prohibited or is not allowed in the manufacturing process? Talking about cosmetics. Please ensure strict nomenclature, labeling, accurate labeling based on the requirements of the country or the importing country. They said nomenclature, strict nomenclature. The language should be in English and maybe one other or two other languages, depending on where you are shipping to. You can't ship to France without some amount of labeling in French. Then as for water used in the production, you're talking about potable water, not contaminated water. Therefore, its quality must be ensured by a system of adequate treatment and testing. Meaning, if the water does not meet the WHO specification for potable water, then it should go for some amount of treatment. And you test to verify whether the quality, the safety is okay for your production. The manufacturing process itself. They say that various measures, that is the key phrase, must be taken into consideration during the manufacturing of your cosmetic product. That is the only way you can ensure that you obtain a quality product. What are some of the necessary things to do? The process of production. We're talking about your raw material, the formula or the formulation, the required equipment needed, and in an accurate and comprehensive documentation. Documentation for a GMP is to document what you do. And it should be what? Retrievable. It should be legible. It should be accurate, not misleading. Documentation is key. Identify the quality control points where you have to ensure that the right thing is done, and it's done immediately. Number the batch if you are doing batch production, and I believe most of you are doing batch production. Lot production is a bit difficult, but there's a way out. And label them properly for what? Easy identification in the production line. Here you are talking about that element of traceability. This batch, you pick raw material A, which is coming from company X, raw material B, which is coming from company Y, raw material C, which is coming from Jamra's company. So that we'll be able to easily identify the production line at any point in time and be able to trace back if there be any issue regarding the safety and quality. So traceability is key. But without this specific batch coding of that critical pieces of information, it will be difficult to trace back. Manufacturing, he said, check the cleanliness, safety, and the calibration of the premises and other equipment before producing to minimize the risk of product contamination. Calibration, your weighing scales, your weighing devices, the analytical balance, because you are doing specific formulation to get the right quality. Now let's look at the finished product. He said the finished product must meet the quality standard that either you yourself have adopted or adapted, or your buyer has given to you. So you establish that before you even start the manufacturing, so that you get a good result, because you are able to meet the specification. That is what is called quality, meeting the specification or the demand, the expectation of the buyer or the end user. And most often you find this quality requirement in the product standard or your own standard or the order made by your buyer. The quality must be maintained during the operation, because if you are not careful, that's what we call operation control. You compromise on the quality. So by the end of the day, when it gets to either the retail shop or the wholesale, you will not be able to guarantee the quality that you started with. So operational storage. Storage can have very negative impact on the quality and the safety of the product. During shipment, you can compromise on the quality and safety of the product. And also, please, when products, like the buyer says, I do not require that much, and therefore take some back, the quality should remain intact, the same. So before you place any finished product on the market, it is necessary for you to verify the compliance with the defined quality criteria. The phrase here is defined quality criteria. So you have the yardstick to compare. We're talking about verification. You check against the standard, the yardstick, and that is the defined quality criteria. Please ensure the strict rules of storage say that you will not compromise on the quality and safety. Please differentiate the different batches. Those ones that, if you like, are rejected by your buyer or became necessary because of what is called the recall or withdrawal processes. Please differentiate them and store them appropriately. We are talking about batches placed in quarantine. You should not mix it up accidentally with the good ones. Please, and these are made possible by proper product labeling, specific, so that you'll be able to identify this and set them apart. When you look at the FDA code, some mention that they are using the FDA code. There is a code for labeling. When you look at the GSA standards, there is a code, GS 227 part 2, who talks about the code of practice in terms of the substances that are permitted. And there is another one, the part 3 talks about restricted substances. So this should tell you that your finished product has some kind of specific requirements to meet. Now, because your system is not zero defect, obviously you come out with deviations, non-conforming products. How do you treat them? How do you treat the off specification and deviations? Your quality control unit or department should be able to do this. It should be able to highlight the off specification products, trace back, that is, try to identify the raw material through to the finished product, the packaging items, which are all out of specification, so that you'll be able to rectify or correct the error. You should be able to do that. So if you don't have proper identification system, obviously it means you don't have a traceability system, and therefore it will be difficult to address some of these off-spec and deviations. Whoever is in charge of the quality control should be able to treat these non-conformities and recommend whether you should destroy them, recycle them, or rework. But these are all technically challenged decisions to make. because it will involve the rejection of raw material or the packaging item. There should be proper justification for rejection. And if the deviation is about the process, if you're able to establish that, without doubt, this must be noted and justified. It means that your process controls are out of control or they are not giving you the desired result, so you have to do something about it. Why am I saying that? The deviation can lead to a decline in quality, and therefore a decision shall be made whether to place the finished product on the market or not. Please consider the consequence of placing an off-spec or defective product on the market. If you're not careful, that will be the end of your business. It constitutes what? Fraud. So let's pay attention to this. Deviation will definitely arise, and that will affect the quality or the safety. And therefore, you have to take the appropriate decision whether to place it on, or you have to rework or destroy. That is very critical. And therefore, you should have in place a competent team to take corrective action, whether they have to rework, destroy, or recycle, based on the root cause analysis that they have done, so that they can prepare the appropriate and adequate corrective action, so that the incident or the defect does not happen again and again and again. That is the essence of corrective action. And eventually we come out with what? A preventive action, because we know what it takes to address those aspects. Waste, obviously, you generate some waste, unwanted material. So you must define the different types of waste that you generate, your operations will generate, either by the production process or control of the process, because destruction, rejection of aspect, you definitely have to manage the waste that comes out of that. And this must be clearly identified, and their disposal must be done and in a very controlled manner. Waste streams should not hamper the production and the control. It must not. Please apply the principle of clean as you go. As you generate the waste, you clean so that you do not contaminate the good products. Now let's look at what is called subcontracting, if you like, the outsourcing. You outsource, some will outsource some aspect of their manufacturing, their production. You outsource your packaging, the testing processes, cleaning, disinfection of the premise, etc., etc. Please make sure the company has a contract or an agreement with the contractor or the subcontractor, which defines the requirements to be met and the acceptance criteria. Take it that we are not doing anybody a favor. You want to protect the image and the quality, safety of your products, and therefore apply the rules, define the requirements to be met, and you can continue doing business with this subcontractor only if you can consistently meet the requirements that you've set for that contract or agreement. Please also look at the choice of your supplier. Here, I will emphasize the choice of supplier of raw material and packaging materials, please. Please have a specification, have the guideline, have the protocol, have the procedure to select your supplier. It's all part and parcel of a good manufacturing practice. How do you handle complaints and recalls? Claims must be investigated with the following elements. Preventive measures against the recurrence of the defaulting or the off-spec product. And then the verification of all concerned batches. Check all concerned batches or lots, if you like, so that you'll be able to take appropriate measures regarding complaints and recall. Processes concerning recall operation should allow fast operation by authorized personnel. Recall, you know what constitutes a recall. Quite different from withdrawal, because the withdrawal is still under your jurisdiction, under your authority, in your maybe bonded warehouse. But the recall is already in circulation, the retail chain. Very critical. If the recall is likely to have an impact on the consumer safety, please, the authorities concerned must be informed immediately. Give them all the details of the batch or the lot. Here too, you are referring to traceability, so that they will be able to recall the products, because it is properly identified and stored separately, pending a decision, looking at the gravity or the severity of the cause for the recall. In the case of outsourced operation, the contract between the prime contractor or the subcontractor must agree on the process when it comes to recall or withdrawal. This is very critical to address complaints and recall. Change management. Changes affecting the quality of the product must be approved and performed by authorized person. An adequate database means that some of your staff, the key staff, to know what constitutes change, and therefore what actions should be taken. Now let's look at one of the critical things, and please note this: internal audit and quality service. To ensure the implementation and the enforcement of this GMP, which is based on the ISO 22716, the company must implement internal audits. The reason why I say you should know this is that based on the outcome of your internal audits, you can have something we call self-declaration of conformity. And that self-declaration of conformity based on internal audit can be and should be part of your PIF to demonstrate compliance that you are operating a GMP based on the ISO 22716. Because I said earlier, I'll ask a question. Please, I may be wrong, correct me. There's no certification for ISO 22716, so far as I know, in Ghana. None of the certification companies have that scope. So you may not have that third-party certification that you can add to your PIF. So what you do is self-declaration. And this is based on what? Your internal audits. That is why I say point 12 is very, very important. This must be led by the company's quality unit or department, because internal audit is managed by the quality unit. The audit team should be in charge of setting up and verifying that all the guidelines outlined in the ISO, a few of them that I mentioned earlier, standard, are correctly implemented. There should be proof to show that they are being implemented and they've been verified, checked, audited. And therefore, we have the report to show evidence that we are meeting the requirements of the ISO 22716 standard. In case of non-compliance, this quality unit is responsible for analyzing the deviation in order to find appropriate corrective measures. Please note here External audits performed by a third party is not mandatory. Third party audit, we are talking about certification bodies. That is external audit. So you can do the first party, which is the internal audit, or a second party, which is the buyer, supplier audit, so that the outcome, the result of this audit, you can base on your self-declaration of conformity on the findings of this audit. Please note, documentation. The company should put in place an updated documentation system to identify activities that relate to the production, control, storage, shipment. And it can be, I'm talking about the documentation, protocol, instruction, procedures, methods, etc., etc. But please, this must be accessible. I did not say they should be hard copies only. It can be soft, can be any form that you can retrieve because it is accessible at any point in time. There should be a signature. Somebody should own that document that I have verified, checked, and append my signature. The date, and it should be updated regularly because as you keep on changing your formulation, the document will also change. Now, in a nutshell, just to summarize the plenty talk, the Nigeria will put it. What is it? How do you comply with the GMP? Start from the left. Look at your raw materials. Check the competence, training, and the performance of your staff. The premises, that's the facility, the equipment that you use. The packaging items. These are all what? Inputs that will go into the value addition, that's the manufacturing process. That will generate some waste because of what you are doing. And what will be the output? The output is your finished cosmetic product. That is meeting what? The quality requirements, either of the standard, the buyer, or the international market. What will be the final control? Talking about good quality, less problem, because you are trying to control deviations, that is off spec. When the quality is good, you take the decision to place the item on the market. When there are deviations, you create some chunk of waste as well. But once you are in control of your finished processes, you'll be able to separate the problematic quality products from the good quality. Good quality meaning fit for purpose, meeting all the product requirements. So here, the bottom line is proper quality control and documentation. And that is the bottom line of good manufacturing practice. Now, let's draw some conclusions. Compliance with the GMP. Compliance with good manufacturing practice for cosmetics is linked to the compliance with the ISO standard 22716. This compliance, as I said earlier, is verified through internal audits or by using a specialized service provider that will check the compliance of your GMP against the requirements of ISO 22716. The ISO 22716 certification is necessary for the marketing of cosmetic products, especially the European market, because of their regulation. Although it requires the implementation of strict measures, there's no official certification for this standard. And I've given you the solution. Internal audits. So let's try to conclude. The cosmetic regulation of the EU 1223 states that the ISO 22716 certificate is to be added to the product information file, PIF, of your cosmetic. And the challenge is that Here, you don't have the certification body. I've given you the solution. However, there's no ISO certification system here. I'm talking about in terms of the certification body, their scope to cover this standard. So the question is, how do you meet this requirement? I demand the answer from you once you've gone through this discussion. This standard gives the guidelines for the production, control, storage, and shipment of the cosmetic product. The objective of this GMP guideline is to define the activities that will enable you to obtain the product that meets the defined characteristics. I'm talking about the quality criteria. These guidelines have been prepared specifically for your consideration as a cosmetic stakeholder or interested party. And therefore, the industry must take into account the specific needs of this sector by applying this standard. Good manufacturing practice constitutes the practical development of the quality assurance. Here, you're talking about quality assurance, not only quality control, quality assurance, a preventive what? Management system. This concept through the description of the plant activity, talking about right from the manufacturing, which is based on sound scientific judgment and risk assessment. With this, I say thank you for your attention. You can contact me through this WACOMP Ghana office. You have my email, you have my phone number, but everything can be channeled to the Chief Technical Officer at WACOMP Ghana. Thank you very much. This ends.
Thank you too, Fred.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred, for this lovely and detailed presentation. Yes, so, I mean, Fred has done it all, he's summarized, but maybe on my part, all that we say is that the benefits of the ISO 22716 is that it will help us improve our quality management system. It would also help us to demonstrate commitment to safety of cosmetic products and ensure our compliance to international guidelines. So this is my take home from what I have gleaned from his presentation. On this note, I think we'll move up to the question session. Already there is a question here, Fred. The first question, yes, somebody, okay, so there's a standard for food, obviously, GMP for food. But the other question is that somebody would want you to go over a point that the self-declaration of conformity can be and should be part of. The fellow missed the last part. If you can explain that, go over that point for him or her.
The EU cosmetic regulation requires that you should attach a certificate that your GMP is based on the ISO 22716 before you can export your cosmetic product to the European Union. And I said that this standard, the 22716, you do not have a certification talking about the attestation that your GMP is based on this standard. Okay? But in your GMP, there's a provision for what is called the internal audit. So based on your internal audit findings, there's several ways of declaring conformance for the compliance. And one of them is self-declaration. Apart from using the third-party certification by either GSO, HGS, or any of these accredited certification body, you can do what is called self-declaration of compliance. And you can only do that when you have the basis for saying that, yes, I comply, my system complies with the requirement of this standard, which I do not have a certificate, a formal certificate for. Once you have a solid internal audit finding, report, you can do that proclamation that I comply based on the internal audit report, because the
All right.
criteria for that internal audit report is the requirements in the ISO 22716. Very simple way of doing conformity in terms of self-declaration.
Thank you very much, Fred. We also have with us our colleague from the certification unit of GSA, the Ghana Standards Authority, Frances Pratt. So if there's any other question on certification, on issues bordering on GSS, is also ready to take a go about what requirement would you need before coming for ISO 22716 certification. I hear my line is bad. Did you hear me, Fred?
Yes, like I said, Frances, you want to take that question? Yes, you do want to
before you know the requirements, whether you meet the requirements, then you have to get the standard. Okay, so we have the standard at the Ghana Standards Authority Library, which is going for 250. So if you get the standard, you get to know the requirements of the standard. Then you can know whether you meet the requirements for certification or not.
Okay, to add to what Frances just said, before you even take a decision to go for certification of any kind, you should have designed your system here, your GMP, based on the requirement of the standard. Okay? Implement whatever has been set up or designed. Allow your system to run so that you generate enough evidence. You're talking about reports, findings, results, based on the requirements in the standard. Then you can conduct two things: internal audits. Use the internal audit finding to conduct management review to assess whether you are ready for certification, because these are basic requirements for any certification, irrespective of the certification body. If you don't have these two reports or records, forget it. They will not even admit your application. Thank you.
Yes. There is a question bordering on the issue of quality and then safety. That in your presentation, you talked about contribution more to quality. Didn't hear something on safety or the environment. So does it address that and the issue of pest control in GMPs? So that's the bulk of the question.
Okay. The safety aspects, I did not emphasize much because the safety aspect is fully addressed by your PIF, Product Information File. In that file, there's a section specifically for safety. And there are a lot of activities to be carried out for you to come out and say your product is safe. Okay? In the quality aspect, they say if you use the right code, like substances that are not permitted, you avoid them. You are not using contaminated raw material. You are not using a packaged material that will jeopardize the safety of your product. So normally, safety, you define safety based on the application of that particular product. Here, you are talking about anything that will be injurious to your skin. That is why I'm saying by definition, that seminar was, I don't know whether the person asking the question was part of that seminar. It was discussed fully by our international experts when we talk about requirement for cosmetics. And even the definition itself is loaded, and there are a lot of issues to be addressed from the definition of cosmetic. Is it only for topical application or is for beautification? So that is why I didn't say, but in your product information file, which I believe will have the opportunity to discuss later on, then you see the full details of the safety aspect of cosmetics.
All right, thank you.
And
on Monday,
Yeah, Charles, go on.
No, Fred, finish. I'll talk about that later.
Okay.
The PIF, as Fred mentioned, on Monday we'll have a discussion. So those of you who are interested, you contact Na Trade, the cluster expert for cosmetics, and then she gives you the link and you join us for that. We would have a very detailed discussion on Monday at 11 o'clock on how to get our acts together to put the PIF documentations together. So all of anybody here who is listening, who is interested, please get in touch with Naatre, and then she would give you the link for you to be part of this discussions on Monday. I think before we end, we'll also copy the link and put it here. So those of you who are interested, you could also join us directly, just in case you don't have NAS contact. First, somebody wants to know the cost of certification. If you want to go into ISO certification, how much does it cost? I think this question always comes up.
Frances should be able to give us some ideas, but you know, the cost from where I sit as a, you know, a system practitioner, it varies. It varies. So Frances, maybe they have a system certification scheme in place. It can give you some general ideas how much it will take. But there are two aspects. The consultancy is separated from the certification process itself. So it varies. So Frances, if you can help us.
Hello. Yes. So I verified from the system certification department, and they are yet to add the 22716 to their scope. So unfortunately, they don't have any price tag to the certification process. But then they have a price tag to the standard, which is 250 cedis for the standard. But then the certification process, there's no price attached to it yet.
Okay.
So for the
so we have it.
For now, the only safeguard is that do your own internal audits based on the requirements of this ISO 22716 and do the self-declaration of conformity. That's what you can do now. Until GSA is able to expand their scope in terms of system certification, which is not a very smooth journey. They also have to prepare and do certain things to be able to expand their scope to cover this particular ISO standard. But for now, to be able to export, adding this information to your PIF, please do your internal audit properly based on the requirements of this standard. So first, our advice is get a copy of this standard from GSA and study it and implement it.
Okay.
Charles, yes.
Please, is there any other question, any other clarification before we bring the session to an end? Yes. Any other question, any other clarification? Okay, so I don't see any other question coming up. So we would want to thank all of you for joining us for today's webinar. We thank Fred for taking us through. The webinar has been recorded. You go to our website, wacompghana.org, under webinars, under trainings, under webinar, you would find a training. By this evening, before evening, it would also be recorded there. We have also posted a link for the product information file webinar on Monday. In the answer, you would find it there. Please go and you would find it. It's been posted. And then you can also have it there to join us if you are interested on Monday. Okay, so Frances, there's a question here. Somebody just prompted me. Now, what's the difference between standard and certification? Okay. Frances, so if you are hearing me, or Fred, both of you.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Hello? Okay, so a standard is a document that has
Yes, we
requirements.
can hear you.
And you're supposed to follow the requirements to make sure you meet the standard specification. So the standard is more like a document with requirements in it, and you're supposed to meet it. That's a standard. It's a document.
Okay. To add to what Francis just said, you need a standard to set up your system. There are several different types of standards. And these are documents prepared based on consensus. The application, it's not mandatory. But if you want a certification, which is an attestation of you doing the right things, having the right documentation and everything in place, you need a reference document. That reference document is the standard. So in systems, you are talking about system, which is made up of several elements, okay? Which will demonstrate that you are actually implementing the requirements of a standard. And you will be assessed against that requirement that you claim you are implementing. And when the result is positive, then you'll be given that attestation. Okay, so there are several system certification. Some you are talking about your system, your operational system. You can even have a certificate against the person, the quality, the competence of a person. You can have a certificate against your processes. Okay, and these are all based on some requirements that you may find in the standard. And once you proclaim you are implementing the requirement in the standard, you'll be assessed against those requirements. And when the results are positive, this one, they say, do what you say you do and show the evidence. And based on the evidence, you'll be assessed and you're given the certificate. It is a testimonial. If you haven't gone to school, complete all your exams, you will not be given a certificate. That's how it is.
All right. Yeah, Fred, before we wrap up, there's a question that, what does deviation in the manufacturing process mean?
Okay. Simple put, you are not able to meet the requirements that is prescribed, either for the process, the product, or even the person. So anything out of spec means that you are not able to meet the requirement. You miss the target, and that's a deviation. That is off spec. So you should set the spec that, oh, I want, let's say, the pH of my cosmetic to be 5.5. Okay. When you check the pH and it's 7, it is a non-spec. You do not meet the 5.5 mark. So it's a deviation. You've missed the target. Simple.
Okay.
Yeah. So you check all your products through some testing and some verification, some inspection. And if you are not able to meet the target, you classify them as off-spec deviation. And you have to do something to bring them back to the required specification.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm done.
Yes. So this question, I think there's one question, but I answered it. Yes, that was done earlier. If you go to the website, if you are into any food production, and you go to the website, you would find the recordings on the webinar available. On this note, we want to thank Fred so much and Frances from the certification unit of GSA also for spending time with us. We want to thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege coming your way. It's been an honor having you for the past hour, joining us and listening in. And we hope that our contributions for you to enhance your quality in the production of your products would be achieved. Again, I would want to remind you that on Monday, 11 a.m., we're having a session on the product information file. So anybody listening who is interested, the link has been posted there. Please copy the link immediately. Na Ache's number was also provided, her contact details. You can contact Na and join us on Monday for this all important discussions. From there are plans to support, handhold some of the companies who are really prepared, ready, to explore into the European market or to the North American market who need this PIF to be supported to be able to do that. So please join us on Monday. So on behalf of the WACOMP team, on behalf of Fred, now our chair, Ebe, who is supporting us from Vienna, and the entire WACOMP team, we want to thank you all so much for joining us. We wish you a great weekend, relaxing weekend. Let's keep safe. COVID is around, it's still there. So let's protect ourselves. Let's remember to wear our masks anywhere we go. On this note, we say thank you very much and looking forward to meeting you all Monday, 11 a.m. sharp for the PIF discussions. Thank you all and have a nice weekend. Bye.
All right, thank you.